Hi guys, Michael Vimy here. So I just got done watching Ijogbon on Netflix, the latest Kunle Afolayan production. And needless to say, I have thoughts. Before I begin, it bears stating that this is not really a review, just more of a general discussion about my thoughts, what I feel about the movie, aspects of the movie that I enjoyed, and its shortcomings and areas that I felt could have been improved. I won't really be going in depth like in a proper review, but at the same time, I could be touching on some slight spoilers, so consider this your spoiler warning. So starting on a positive note, this being a Kunle Afolayan production, obviously the expectation is that it's going to be on a higher level than your typical Nollywood fare. And right off the bat, the movie goes above and beyond in terms of its presentation. It had some very cool cinematography, set designs, basically what you expect from your typical Kunle Afolayan film. So at least on that level, I'll say that the film kind of measures up to the current standard he has set for himself. So in terms of story and plot, the film centers upon a group of high school kids that stumble upon a stash of diamonds. And in their bid of trying to profit off of these diamonds, they end up attracting all manner of trouble when the original owners of the diamonds come looking for it. And like the title suggests, Ijogbon, the whole thing ends up in chaos. And to set the stage for all of that, the movie opens with a car chase between the man that stole the diamonds and the people trying to get it. And from everything that was happening at this point, I would say that I was still genuinely intrigued to see where all of it was going. But it doesn't take very long before the whole thing starts veering into the realm of tedium, when you start getting scenes that overstay their welcome, because they introduce our leads, the group of kids, and from what they showed, like the depiction that they gave us was that these kids were pretty much acting like kids. Like it was almost bordering on the edge of being a caricature of what a kid should act like rather than what an actual kid in this day and age would act like. But I'm willing to forgive the movie for this depiction at this point. So they were showing the kids living their best life, but eventually it was revealed that they actually had aspirations of jackpotting, as they say, like moving out, starting off somewhere new. Your typical small town hero fantasies and dreams and whatnot. But immediately becomes clear that the movie was filled with a lot of plot contrivances because our characters were just pretty much acting according to the demands of the plot rather than how an organic human being would act. For example, now in the beginning, there was a point where they discovered a bunch of tire tracks running through the village where they live, and their first instinct was to just follow the tire tracks and leave the current chores they were trying to run. And nobody acts like that. Like real kids will never just see tire tracks and all of a sudden that becomes their obsession. But because the plot needed the kids to get to the point where they find the diamonds, this needed to happen. So my point is that there are more subtle, classier ways of moving the plot along without being so heavy-handed about it. And I guess this is an overriding theme about my thoughts with the execution of the film, because the whole thing just feels heavy-handed in places. But another concession I will at least give the film is that it makes an attempt to give the characters some character development, because we actually get to spend time with each of the four leads and we get to see a bit of their background, where they're coming from, why they actually feel that they deserve better or they want to strive to go to greener pastures and all that. So the film actually takes some time to establish all of that. It's just unfortunate that it falls into the trap of telling us all of this rather than just showing it to us organically. And the way it tells us is through some of the most atrocious or borderline atrocious dialogue I've heard, making the kids feel less like believable human beings and more like wooden cardboard cutouts. It is also not always clear whether the film is being unintentionally ironic or self-aware of its own cheesiness, because you have a lot of instances where you just find that there's a lot of comical things happening and you can't really tell if the characters themselves are in on the joke or if this is just bad writing or bad dialogue. For example, there was a point during the movie where a search party was put together to look for the missing children, and this search party has to be like the lamest search party I've seen in my life, because they were always like 2 steps behind. They always seem to just be finding out information that is already apparent to the audience watching it. So I really couldn't tell if this was just there as a joke, like if it was just there for comical effect, or this was actually those characters acting like idiots. So, but to be honest, all the bad dialogue and stiff acting can still be forgiven if the movie itself manages to transcend all of that by at least providing some level of mystique and intrigue to carry the whole thing through. But because the film is cobbled together in such a way that it almost feels as if it is not sure whether or not the audience will be able to decipher what it's trying to tell them, it now tends to get very heavy-handed with its messaging, with its storytelling, and that is just a fault of all the Kunle Afolayan productions I've seen thus far, because this is coming after other movies like Anikpolapo that came out last year, and even Citation, which were two movies that I equally felt were way below par. But I guess the best thing I can say about this one is that at least I'll consider it a step in the right direction. It at least falls a notch above all the other ones I just mentioned. But still, man, like, it just feels as if the movie was made for dollars. Because I don't know why a character would tell us something, tell the audience something, then immediately after, you now hop into a flashback scene that is detailing the exact same thing that was just shown. That's what I call wasting of time. Like, you've already conveyed this information to the audience. We don't now need to sit down in another scene for another 2 to 3 minutes showing the exact thing that was just said in the first place. It's either you do one of the two. Either the character says it and we move on, or we fall back on the flashback scene to reveal that information to us. But you can't have it both ways, is what I'm trying to say. So, and you get a lot of instances like this throughout the whole movie, which is what ultimately brings the whole thing down, in my opinion. The movie also seems to borrow quite a bit from the movie Dope, which was a movie that came out, I think it came out in mid 2010s. And it was a movie that was also about a bunch of kids that happened to stumble upon, in this case it was drugs, like a stash of drugs, and had to navigate how to like get rid of it and play all the parties that were interested in getting their hands on the drugs. And basically the same premise is what I'm trying to say. And the main difference, aside from both films being directed by Nigerians obviously, is the fact that Dope was operating on a much more competent level in terms of the storytelling and in terms of the overall execution, while this one just seems like it was catering to the lowest common denominator, which I guess is a fault of most Nollywood productions in general. But still, I'm of the opinion that we can't really be giving our Nollywood productions a pass just for the mere efforts, like for making the efforts, because there are all these basic elements of storytelling that make up a film. Like, a film is not just about having the best cinematography or having the best looking color grading. Like, fine, all that elevates your movie, but at the core of the whole thing, you still need to have like a very competently well told story. You still have to have characters that are characterized in believable ways, characters that the audience can actually get behind, that can actually carry them through the story. And that is what was just missing from this and sadly many of our Nollywood productions. But once again, overall, I would still say that this was at least another step in the right direction, but it was still leagues away from where it needed to be overall. Like I said, this is not really a review, so I'm not really going to end with a score or anything, but all I will say is that if you're a fan of Kunle Afolayan and you enjoyed his previous movies, then yes, there's definitely plenty to enjoy in this one, which is the one takeaway I wanted to have from everything I've said, that overall, despite all of its flaws, despite all of its shortcomings, the movie at least didn't fail to entertain me. And on those grounds, I would say that I would definitely give it a recommendation, especially if you're a fan of his previous work. Anyway, these are just my thoughts about Ijogbon, which is currently streaming on Netflix. Will you be checking the movie out anytime soon, or have you already? In which case, what do you think? Like, what are your thoughts about the movie? Do you agree with my criticism? Let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed watching the discussion, or to subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on if you'd like to see more discussions like this in the future. And until the next one, this is Michael, signing off.